thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm so happy to have you on here. And one thing, I know we first met when we were doing like an accelerator program with Propel. And one thing that I remember, it was really kind of funny, was that at the end of it, we had to give like this 5-minute presentation of our work. And you went in there and you had like this huge presentation. You had all of these images. And I think you went off for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. And I was just like, not only did you do a really good job, but you kept me like super engaged and entertained the whole way. So I really appreciate that. I'm like, I got to have this guy on the show. So that was awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. I tried to keep it down, but I talk way too much.
Yeah,
so
that's okay.
You're going to have to be on top of me today.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a great conversation here today.
No, it's nice meeting you too. Like, it's funny with the production quality around here. I almost feel it means a lot. Like having a bit of a background in film, like to actually feel like you see a person and you hear them with high quality. It kind of feels like you're meeting them a bit versus like you would have seen a grainy images of me up until now. So it almost feels like I've met you before.
Yeah.
So it's a really it means a lot to go that extra step with the production quality.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. So I'm hoping you enjoy this, and I'm hoping everyone else enjoys this as well too as we get going.
I'm telling you, it's like the culmination here of like Venus flytrap between two firms, Zach.
Yeah, right.
All came together at the perfect moment for the unconventional mindset.
There we go. Yeah,
and I love your I love the brand, by the way. I just saw it the other day for the first. You sent me a picture, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Right away, I was like, I really like that. I think you're pretty much done. And do you know what else I was thinking today? That period. I was like, green, interesting choice, goes with the thing. But then I thought, hey, where that could be really dynamic is that the color of the period could change.
Yep.
Depending on who you're talking to, what you're doing. Yep. It could be purple one day. With the whole AI and Siri and the way everything glows when you're talking to it, it could have a dynamic quality. So anyway, I really like it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too when I was doing that. I appreciate that. But truth be told, I probably spent about 30 minutes doing this. So I don't know if it's a combination of all the things I've learned over the years.
No,
like,
it's like
I'm going to create this thing.
Zach and Venus laid it all down, and it just this is the result.
And there we go. There we have it. Yeah, right on. So super excited, super pumped.
Yeah.
One thing that I know that you've done, which is really, really cool, which I love, is that you've actually invented like an actual physical product, and like for something that people can actually use and interact with. And for me, I'm always a computer guy. It's like I just make some software stuff for websites, whatever. Yeah. So that's really, really cool. So it's almost
I'm representing here today.
You got to, we're definitely gonna dive into that in a bit here. So it's like you can say that you're an inventor, but I've gone over the things that you've done in your life and throughout your career, and you're like, you've done much more than just being like an inventor. So like, how would you describe yourself? Like, what would you describe yourself as?
Just a lot of arrested development.
Okay.
But I think development's the key word. Like I'm just naturally, I think we're all curious and we're all passionate. And I think it just on the, it often explodes from the surface or something with me sometimes. And I don't know. I just think it's a journey. I'm always on a journey. I just love learning.
Yeah.
And I learn the hard way for sure.
Yep.
I burn myself and 10 times instead of, if you're really smart, maybe you wouldn't burn yourself once.
Right. Yeah.
Let alone 10 times before I finally learn something. So I'm a slow learner, but when I get it, I think it really crystallizes.
Then you can run with it. Yeah.
And I've learned it's frustrating to feel like it's so slow sometimes to pick something up and learn something that I know, depending on what it is, someone would get it right away. Right. But it reminds me of the only way you can really feel free or know what freedom is to be imprisoned first.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's the appreciation and just the journey of trying to figure stuff out. And then when you talk about like inventing something, I don't care if it's sells and is a successful product, really. Once you make it, you're like, I win.
Yeah, it's that accomplishment. Yeah.
It'd be icing on the cake. It'd be a dessert if maybe it helped me be more free financially and everything else. But yeah, it's just the enjoyment of creating, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, which is
You
awesome.
can see I'm already starting to ramble, so you
Yeah,
gotta.
no, it's all good. It's all good. I appreciate it.
I
So,
haven't even had coffee yet
yeah,
today.
well, we'll get going for sure. But I really like what you said in terms of what was it? How you framed it? But there was something in the sense of you can't really know what happiness is until you've felt like sadness or whatever. So it's like
Mhm.
almost to do two things. Like you need to have that failure in order to kind of understand what the
And
success
that's why
is.
I think pretty much every human, the vast majority of humans, experience sadness at times
Yeah.
or low times in their life or whatever. And it's like getting through those and having them, it's just like everything in life. It's appreciation to really know the difference between
Yeah.
normal is so awesome. That's
Mhm.
what a lot of people don't get. It's like to sit there and say, I'm not too stressed, nothing is horrible's happening, and say, hey, I don't have to be like scrambling for something like that exciting, like normal
Right.
is okay, especially relative to other countries in the world where
Right.
there's so much going down.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, the appreciation to get up in a country like this
Yeah.
and be able to maybe do what you want to do versus try to avoid the next drone attack or something. Like it's just,
Yeah. I mean, we're so blessed to live in a place that we live in right now. And even you could be upset with the politics that are going on right now, things
Mhm.
that are happening. But truth be told, we wake up in a country where we have clean water every day. I mean, we had a little thing in Halifax here just not too long ago where we're under boiled water. But, for the most part, we have clean water, we have electricity flowing. We can get up. We can basically do and work on whatever it is that we want.
it's
We can learn anything. The internet's there.
unbelievable
It's amazing.
how like lucky we are.
Yeah.
And it is luck where you were born, everything just, and how if someone doesn't feel appreciative of a lot of the good things about being born in a free place,
Mhm.
obviously everybody's got can have huge problems where you can't be happy or whatever, but it's underlying it, at least you've got the appreciation of not being in the middle of a war.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. All right. So going back to talking about journey, you're talking about like you're going through this whole journey of life. So let's maybe start back, I guess, in your university days when you first kind of, when you go to university, you're kind of like a young pup. So you kind of studied physics. And I think that was your first foray into entrepreneurship, working with a professor. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was I guess the first hint, but I was just arrested development. I was
Right.
more interested in partying and just not really focused.
Right.
I had no clue what was going on, but I was so not baked yet. But at the same time, interesting local professor. He was originally from the States. Started as a startup. And in those days, the word startup, you didn't really even hear in normal conversations. And so kind of becoming his assistant both at the university and then at this startup in certain ways, and getting to play with fun projects or things that people were struggling with. I guess without me actually being aware of it, it was an interesting local introduction to a pretty neat thing where the company ended up being successful and ended up being sold successfully to a larger company and everything.
Okay.
So
What was the company like? What was it? What
it
did
was
you guys do?
So it was an oceanographic company, well, for satellite remote sensing. So
Okay.
satellites that have specialized cameras that look down at the Earth, especially this company was for the oceans and kind of foliage on land.
Right.
So basically it was kind of the early days of actually being able to have a satellite in space that's able to look at the Earth as one organism.
No. Okay.
And so fun things like we put a buoy out in Bedford Basin with an old big cell phone like that one from Saved by the Bell.
Yeah. One that Zach or whatever would have and call the girls on. Yeah.
See, there's Zachs everywhere. So, but yeah, to go out and put that on a buoy, and it had upwards and downwards looking cameras and a thing through the water column to see, hey, what's the light that's actually penetrating? How green is it? What's going on? And every night it would turn on. I'm guessing the data plan was insane because this would have been like somewhere around 92 or 93.
Okay. Yeah.
Early days of even what the World Wide Web was and stuff.
Yeah.
But it would actually call in, and then I use like Gplot, which I think is GNU plot, which still exists, to plot the live data. So, I mean, there's cool in situ stuff like that,
Yeah.
along with I was involved with like the dishes that track the satellites as they come over the horizon. So in a way, Starlink is a similar vibe going on,
Yeah.
but has to track the satellite, ingest the data,
Yeah.
process it, and make pretty pictures of the ocean with it or whatever. So it was both the whole kind of spectrum of a local buoy sitting there
Yeah.
and then actually trying to track these satellites. And a satellite called CWIFS launched at that time, which was just a beautiful example of what NASA could achieve in a new type of technology. And so anyway, getting the first day that we were getting data from that, it was exciting. So
Yeah. No
kind
kidding.
of that was the industry, I guess you could say.
Okay, right on. And after that, I didn't know you actually worked at NASA, which is actually really cool, right? It was called the Goddard Flight Center or something like that?
Goddard Space Flight
Goddard
Center.
Space Flight Center,
I
yeah.
was the groundskeeper,
Okay.
but it was still cool.
Okay. Did you get did you get to interact with a lot of the people out there doing research? Like obviously you went to school, did some science and stuff and physics and whatever. So did you get to interact with any of those people? And
Yeah, I wasn't the groundskeeper. I was a programmer.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, I didn't get the camera on the ground. Okay,
I should have ran with it.
Yeah, you came. Well, your face was so serious. I'm like, is he serious? What's going on? Yeah, like that.
I love groundskeeping, by the way.
Yeah.
Like my lawn is one of my favorite things. So maybe that's what I really wanted to do.
Totally aside, are you a Star Trek fan?
I am.
So I don't know if you know that Star Trek. It was Picard was always talking about go see this Boothby guy or whatever at Starfleet Academy, and he was the groundskeeper. But everyone's saying like he was the guy that basically taught all the cadets like everything. He's like, this is the guy that knows everything. So that's why you said that. I'm like, okay, maybe this kind of makes sense. But anyways,
and Willie, you can't forget about Willie. So anyway, you were saying about Star Trek. That was a neat thing about. So from one neat thing about working for the professor was when you're in an academic environment, which I know you were at Dow, still might be in ways, you're with people who really often care about what they're doing. And it's not just like a place where people hate their job sometimes.
Yeah.
Some of the people would still hate their job.
But of course.
Underneath it, there's a pursuit for science and discovery. So what's interesting so I like that. And then the startup vibe, same thing. You will have some people who are kind of excited about what they're doing, and it's not like they're just going for a paycheck. Of course, some people are, but the people who are trying to build it aren't.
Yeah.
And then you have a typical job where you might not enjoy it, and you have to go in, and someone tells you what to do, and you don't like it or whatever. So the academic and the startup environment have a lot of nice things to them.
Yeah.
What was cool about NASA from like the first day you walk in, like I was probably the dumbest person in my whole department, and
that's not a bad place to be in.
It isn't.
You're in prime to soak up a bunch
and you
of knowledge.
go and you look in someone's office and there's Star Trek posters all over it, and they just want to talk to you about Star Trek all the time.
Right.
And they're one of the
amazing.
smartest people in the like atmospheric science is like rocket science is pretty simple. In some ways, it's a controlled explosion.
Right.
I mean, it's more complex than that.
For sure.
Atmospheric science, trying to figure out what happens with light coming down or going
to the atmosphere, and
it's you can't solve it theoretically yet. So it's a mix of theoretical and empirical. It's the most sophisticated, kind of like fluid dynamics is so sophisticated. And you have this guy who loves Star Trek and loves his atmospheric science. So you have people there who are there, and as opposed to academia where it can get stale and there's downsides to it, and opposed to a startup where it can be sometimes too corporate and stressful and everything. To me, NASA was like a beautiful kind of almost combination, mainly because a lot of the people there were born wishing that they could work at NASA.
Right.
And they were there, and it was their dream. And so that, for me, it wasn't never my dream. It just fell into my lap because I had a very specific background, and I was living in a VW bus and ran out of money.
Okay, So
my girlfriend at the time was like, Mike, maybe you should think about this. Moving to the States, I'm a hippie. It was the Bush administration at the time. But anyway, so yeah, I had never dreamed of going there. Technically, I had never worked to get there in a normal way, and then to be surrounded by all these people, that was my favorite thing about it. It was just the environment of people who really wanted to be there and were passionate about what they were doing.
Yeah. From an entrepreneurial perspective, Are there any things that you can list off that you learned that have carried on throughout your life in terms of like working at NASA?
I think just what I was saying, like,
Yeah.
if you love what you're doing, if someone said you can't go to work today, you can't keep working on your project, like, it could be devastating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're choosing the right minimum viable product or industry, which could be, you could have 30 that you'd love them all, but as long as the one you chose is one of those 30 that you end up really saying, I really like this, that's like, I think probably the biggest thing I took away is just an environment where pretty much everybody loved what they were doing and
Yeah.
wanted to be there, and the world class aspect of it, where some
Yeah.
of them were the best in the world doing it. And I was just lucky enough to sit there and they would treat me as a colleague. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
So,
that's really cool. So you mentioned, I think this is a good segue to talk about, you mentioned like minimal viable product. Can you just maybe give the audience that might not know what that is, just to maybe explain a little bit more about that?
yeah, it's only probably been the last, I don't know, 5 years that it really started to resonate and I really got it. Like, so minimum viable product, if you have an idea for, it could be a minimum viable goal in your life, but let's say product. It's, if you've got an idea to maybe bring something to market, the biggest mistake I think people make is feature creep. They'll say, hey, this would be good. And they start making it and they start throwing in things that are luxury items instead of really honing in on the ember of why it might solve pain points and why somebody might want to purchase it over something else. But it's also the selection of that, like, widget. So when you're trying, if you're kind of interested in something and you're trying to decide, oh, I kind of would like to do this, and you really say, well, what's the core of this? And you're really narrow down what is the real, like, ember. You might realize that ember is being done by so many other people. It's going to be really tough. Or
Right.
the ember doesn't interest me as much as I thought it did. Or the ember, it's people, I don't think it's that useful, or it's too risky. A lot of people might not think it was an important enough ember.
Right.
So that it's the selection process and narrowing it down to, I remember talking to one of our Propel colleagues who was creating a smartwatch, and we had a smart ring.
The smart ring. Yeah, I remember that.
And we had an interesting discussion where there's so much competition coming in that space.
Yeah.
And just saying, okay, like, you're not going to be able to compete very well with
Like
Samsung,
the Fitbits and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
all these companies, including if Apple comes out with one. What's the core? Like, is it medical? Is it what is it going to take? What is it going to do in a way that's better or cheaper? And then, like, if you really do it versus, I'm not sure exactly what it could do, all these different features. Like, you better, like, narrow that down.
Right.
But it becomes more fun when you narrow it down, because then you actually have a better chance of creating something tangible versus this feature creep.
Yeah. And something that actually really solves a problem that people are having.
Yeah, it'll hopefully be a good choice. And that kind of builds on itself, because you're like, hey, I think this is a good idea. Maybe I'm kind of onto something, and you start to build it, and you're like, I actually believe in this. Versus you might start to build it, and you might say, the more I get into this, I'm not sure if it's a very good idea. So that minimum viable product, to kind of keep looking at it and say, should it shift? Should it stay what I thought it was? And is it still small enough? Obviously, before you go to market, hopefully you can add some luxury items on. But version 2 is fine for all of those. And whichever ones make it into the first release, great. But as long as you know what that minimum thing is until you've created it, it's like you're wasting time creating things on the peripheral.
Yeah. Are there even things that people can do even before they go to actually build something to test out whether their MVP or whether their idea is actually something that's worthwhile pursuing? Because I have a billion ideas, and there probably a lot of them are just garbage. So instead of me spending all this time trying to build something and then put it out there, are there things that people can do to test things out before they invest too much time into it?
So the accelerator where I met you, I think that was the biggest thing I took away from that, was interviewing people.
Right.
You tell me what you thought about that.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a really good idea is trying to really figure out how your idea is going to serve a particular market or a particular type of person. So if you have an idea of a product and you have an idea of who the market is going to be, instead of building something, just go out and try to talk to those people that you think are going to help. Tell them about your idea and interview them, and then see what they have to say about it, and just kind of have a dialogue with them, and then just figure out if it's gonna work or not.
Yeah, and it's funny how I used to think this way too. Is, well, if I tell somebody about it, unless you're inventing something magical that's easy to recreate, to tell somebody about a really great idea you have, the odds of that person saying, "Oh, this is a good idea, I'm going to steal it and go do something," the odds of that somehow hurting your journey versus the odds of them giving you feedback that will increase the odds of your success.
Right.
It's probably, like, depending on what it is, my guess is the average is 1,000 to 1 or something.
Maybe even more.
Yeah, it depends on the product. Obviously, if you have an inventive thing or idea that you know is a special one, like it's a new flying jacket because you figured out the flux capacitor.
Yeah, or hoverboard or something.
Yeah, so if you're talking to someone and say, "Hey, I figured out the flux capacitor, you just got to tweak this knob," that's dangerous.
For sure.
But there's not too many flying jackets products around that, and even if it was, you could talk to somebody about, if I made a flying jacket, and they'd be like, "This guy's crazy," but yeah, I'd use it, you know, so you can always do it. But yeah, I think it's obvious. You know that if you build it and you're smart, they will probably come. And to me, it's a mix of listening to your customer, and also a lot of times a customer might not realize the problems or talk about a Band-Aid. So to me, it's a mix of listening and getting feedback from the customer, along with trying to come up with something maybe your customer hasn't thought of yet. And the mix of those two, like a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to really listen to the customer, but they don't innovate on their own. To me, it's more exciting to really try to come up and push yourself to create an awesome product, and then get the feedback and see if that helps you improve it. I mean, even asking people could help you come up with the product, but I think it's a mix of, if you really think well about your MVP and you really think it's good before you talk to somebody and you really do your research, you can build it and they will come. A lot of the time.
I will say, for me, in my personal experience, though, I mean, I like that slogan, "If you build it, they will come." But I feel like it's very dangerous, because the startup of the thing that I started, which was creating components to help people build websites, I spent 6 months building that thing, and nobody knew about it, nobody knows about it, and nobody came. So I think if you're going to build it and you think it's a good idea, and I thought it was a really great idea, but I didn't put forth the effort to do the proper marketing to get people to know about it. So I think you have to, yes, think it's a good idea, and maybe you're solving like your own problem, which could be a good thing to do, but you got to figure out how you're going to do the marketing aspect of it to let people know about it. Because at the end of the day, people still need to know.
And it depends a lot on the product too. If you make a flying jacket, it's going to sell. Depending on how it works, I guess.
So it doesn't crash and burn. Listen, 50% of the people, they can land it.
Yeah, maybe it's not a good example, but I don't know, if you built something like that, there's certain things, it's like, if this worked, I'm 99.9% sure people are going to buy it because there's nothing else out there. Versus if it's something that's not quite as much of a huge like breakthrough or something, then it's that feedback's way more important in early days to maybe, if you had done all that, you may have been, it's probably awesome that you did it. Because that's the thing. You won, you went through that process. You learned so much, I'm guessing, even if some of it was just, you thought was slugging away at work, that he's like, is this gonna, but that's being in prison, man. You got to be in prison.
Those are the failures. Don't be afraid to fail. And
And so the thing is, back then, if you had asked more people and they guided you, and maybe you kind of settled on a podcast thing, which I sense is one of your, like, definitely in your wheelhouse, then you may have done this sooner, but who knows what you would have lost in not failing and learning from it. Who knows which is better.
Yeah, that's a big, I think we're going to talk about this. I have a few questions to ask you about this, but maybe we can just talk about it right now. Is for me, when I was doing that thing, I've kind of slowly came to the realization that doing websites every day and doing things around that, it wasn't really a passion. It wasn't something that really made me wake up in the morning and be like, yes, I'm going to do this. Cause I've been doing it for like 20 years now. And it's kind of gone to the point where I'm like, I'm not really learning much anymore. And
I've sensed it. I hear it. I see it right now.
Yeah,
it's obvious.
Yeah,
and I'm guessing you have to balance it with your existing clients to let them know, I do still enjoy this. I still want to support you.
Of course. Well, that's even where it's really fun. When I'm talking to my clients, I'm having sit downs with them. I'm like, we can do this on your website and we can do all this. And they're like, yes, this is amazing. Let's do it. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. But then when I have to sit down and implement, it's like, can I just hire somebody else to do it? So that's where I'm kind of at now. It's like, if I could figure out how I could just bring somebody else to do the work that I don't like doing, but then I could just interact with people, right? And have the stuff that really does.
You're so selfish.
Me,
I just want to sit back and do all the fun stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's so selfish. But yeah, so that's just kind of the mindset that I'm slowly kind of realizing is like, what is it that I can do in my life that makes me feel that every day I'm waking up doing something that's meaningful and enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I really think you got to, it's almost the longer you're in prison, the better, as long as you come out and you still have some life left.
Right. Yeah, it's true. Right? Until you figure it out. Well, it's funny. You're going back to the whole thing you said about ideas. There's so many people that I've talked to and I've tried really hard to push them away from this. They're like, I'm going to start this business. I have this idea, but I'm not going to tell anybody about it because I'm pretty sure like everyone's going to steal my idea. And I'm like, nobody is going to steal your idea. And I hear the idea. And I'm like,
short. Life is too short. Yeah, it's like the odds of someone stealing your idea versus you actually going forward and finishing your idea. It's just ridiculous. Everybody has other lives out there. I mean, again, it depends. If you've figured out the flux capacitor, don't show people the blueprints.
Yeah.
Other than that, And
even then, because it's all about execution and everything like that too. Like I wanted, like Elon Musk, I always look at him and look at all the different things he's doing. Like he can have a billion ideas, but he just knows how to execute. Like I can take his ideas of, hey, I want to launch a rocket in space. I don't know the first thing about doing that, but I guess he just has all those things to be able to execute the idea. Maybe you have a different opinion on.
No, I hate the man, but I'm curious. Hopefully he comes through whatever. I think he's doing things he should have got out of his system in his 20s, but maybe I just don't. I sense I don't like the person.
Yeah.
So but I've wondered about that, and I don't even want to spend the time learning about it. But if it was him doing it to set up the teams that are brilliant teams, if that was his doing and not his assistants being able to do it, like he's obviously genius in all these ways. But yeah, that's one of the things is like, how do you build those teams so that you can sit back and be the Steve Jobs?
Yeah. That's a whole nother skill in itself then, to be able to get talented people around you to do the stuff that you can't.
And I don't think I'm good at that. It's just, I may or may not be good at it, but it's something I'd rather build stuff. And so it's a double-edged sword where it's like, well, if I want it done, I'll do it myself. And I don't mind because I love what I'm doing. But if some of the things I was doing, I was able to build a little team to start it, they would go much more quickly.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'm like, well, maybe later on, but right now, until I learn, it's kind of like Steve Jobs. He was a software developer. He was in the trenches for all of the first Mac and everything. Yeah. He actually knew what the heck he was doing. Yeah. And so to kind of at the early stage, like again, I feel like I'm 30. I'm 52. I feel like I'm 30 in a business world because I'm just learning.
Don't look a day over 35 to me from here, man.
It's off-putting to hear that.
No, the off-putting. Yeah.
So then I should be off-putting, but
yeah,
anyway.
I'll be off-putting. Eh?
So, but yeah, it's like to have earned your stripes or cut your teeth or whatever is essential, I think, to then being somebody who could properly manage a team and get the respect from the team because they know, hey, well, at least you kind of know what you're talking about. And so that was a painful process for me with my first real startup, a film technology, where we are at the mercy of modern software developers. I think we went through 3 firms, some of them very arrogant, some of them great, but all kinds of issues, but really at the mercy of these younger developers, throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars at them. And I mean, that was just one one aspect of the whole
Okay.
project. But that's where when I ended up exiting, I
Right.
just said, I got to learn to be a real coder, developer. I don't want to feel that powerless again. Like,
Right.
it wasn't
Okay.
bad. I was just like, hey, I wish I knew more, whether it was to do it myself or just to really
Yeah.
have synergy with the developers. And so that's where I said, I'm doing this. And for 10 years now, I've pretty much lived and breathed and tried to become a real modern software developer instead of a scientific programmer.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's back up there for a little bit. So yeah. So this is what 2013 that you founded your own company, right? Or co-founded a company.
Co-founded.
What was it? What was
It
it
was
called?
about there. Andra, A-N-D-R-A,
Yeah.
still up there, still waiting, still nothing really compares to it in what it does, but
Okay.
it's the execution.
Okay.
And it's also the minimum viable product
Okay.
as to why it's, I think, collecting a bit of dust.
Okay.
But yeah, I had come back from NASA, and my deepest passion I ever experienced at that point was filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to NASCAD Film School just to be forced to focus on some of the things that maybe I wouldn't have learned or
Okay.
done.
Where is that film school?
NASCAD?
Yeah. Where is that?
Oh, in Halifax.
Oh, in Halifax.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Oh,
the
that's
arts,
right.
main
We do
arts
have
school on the
right.
East Coast.
Yeah. Right.
NSCAD.
Yep.
Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. They've been around for, I don't know, 100 years.
Was it a good school?
Pretty interesting and cool being an art school. There's whatever, but yeah, it was. I had only been in kind of scientific
right
environments for universities, and so it was very interesting. My first day literally was glue and straws and
oh my goodness,
cutting pieces of paper to. I don't know if we were building something that would tell us what our mood was that day, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is different.
Yeah, no kidding. Eh?
And the average age, I think, was like 18 or 19, but it was awesome learning experience. But anyway, the main professor in the film department was kind of playing around with trying to improve film focus.
Yeah.
People don't realize to this day, you might have this crazy high-tech set. Scarlett Johansson's running around explosions. And if you see behind the scenes, there's this one person trying not to get hit by with explosive, turning a dial to try to keep it in focus.
Right when the camera's going to, he's on the dolly or whatever. Yeah.
Well, even just running around, the focus puller has a handheld thing, and they're running around, and they're getting paid $300,000 a year because they can literally look right now and tell you that is 32.6 inches away.
They just know the distance and they know how to dial it in.
Years and years, and react and all this stuff. But the funny thing is, they misfocus all the time, and if there's big explosions, it could cost you like $500,000 if you have soft focus on a scene.
Yeah, because you got to reshoot it.
Yeah. So it's this real weird aspect of the most modern, sophisticated film sets still have this one Achilles heel in there. And obviously, if they don't make a mistake and it's a engaging scene, it's nice to have the human thing. But if you could just lock it in and then play around with the nuances, that would be better.
Okay.
So anyway, he was just kind of playing around with an iPad to see if he could, because film students are even obviously worse than Hollywood.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
It's like you're watching this footage and you're like, well, of the last 10 minutes, 2 minutes is usable because it was kind of in focus.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where he realized my background, and I guess you could say we co-invented the first ever truly automatic focusing system that used. So I found a system that they used for fighter pilots. Like I was just, I knew what it's still, no one has cracked the nut yet, where right now, if I wanted to know where your head was, where the tip of your nose was, and you were running around a room, you could have optical sensors trying to do it.
Yeah.
You could try to put different sensors on you, but there's still no like holy grail.
Right.
And so this system that they use for fighter pilot heads, it creates a magnetic field. And then if you put a sensor on an object in it, you can tell within millimeters, like 120 times per second with 6 degrees of freedom, where that is and where it's pointing. It's amazing.
Okay.
And I found, I was like, oh my God, there is something that exists.
Yeah.
So, thanks. Yeah. So, basically it was integrating that system into an app to, if you put a sensor, say on the back of your head, because your head is a rigid object,
Right.
I can then map exactly where everything is on your head.
Relative to that point.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then if I said, oh, I'm going to make 1 point here and 1 point here, and I do this, I could say I want to stay focused on this eye, and I do this, it's going to go, but I could easily switch to this eye at any point because see how this is farther from the camera. So basically I could say, well, I want to focus on your earlobe. And because it's a rigid object, I could make 1,000 points on your head and just say, focus on that. Wherever you go, move the focus so that it stays crisp. And then with your finger, you can just decide which object.
Okay.
And you can go from one to the other by just sliding your thumb to shift focus from one subject to another. Or if I'm on you, I can play around with the few millimeters to say, I want to actually come out to the tip of your nose for a second, or if you were pointing a gun. So anyway, that's the system. To this day, it still hasn't been actually sold.
Yeah.
It's still one of a kind. And some of the footage that we recorded is still the first ever. It's funny, we were under wraps for years. And this was one where we were kind of afraid to let the secret out.
Right, because you're like, oh, this is our thing. And if Hollywood finds out, they're going to steal it.
It seems so obvious. So we were very secretive. And we got we have a big patent and all this other jazz. So we were going to unveil it to the world in Vegas at the NAB, which is the biggest trade show of its type for all this kind of stuff. And Hollywood follows very closely and famous people are there. So anyway, there was one blog that we were just kind of hand picking. We're like, whichever blog we put this on, news shooters, the one we chose, it will go viral. We just knew because we knew enough about the film world.
Right.
And so we chose the night before to have this thing do it. And it just went absolutely viral.
It did. Okay.
Yep. The next morning I went to Vegas first to make sure that they were setting up our booth and everything. And so I was alone there and got up in the hotel room with a message to call this Copa group or something. Francis Ford Coppola and his technical director calls and gets me to call him and invites me to the vineyard. So that's the example of, I didn't go, I wasn't allowed to go. The product wasn't ready, but at the same time, it's a shame.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
But that's where if you have, you can have a product that if you build it, they will come, which is very different than if you build an MVP that works well and finish it.
Right.
And so yeah, it's a very interesting lesson for me when we got some funding from NRC. IRAP's great program,
National Research Council here in Canada. Yeah.
And they'll pay, I think it's about 80% of in-house and 50% of contracted for a project they approve. And it's really, the program's all about helping innovative companies to pay employees to hopefully have a successful product to generate more employment. So it's all about trying to
stimulate the economy.
Stimulate employment and economy. So one of the first things they said, and they said it a couple times, was they just kept preaching on this MVP thing. And I was like, they'd leave me like, we know what we're doing. It's like, we're not going to get rid of all the features. We know what we're doing.
Right.
It's like they're at NRC maybe because they weren't in a successful startup or whatever.
You've never ran a successful business. What are you doing telling me?
I'm the idiot. I'm the idiot. And so, that's the first time I really started to really say, why are they so into this minimal viable product thing? And then feature creep and just not defining and saying, we're gonna, even though the thing to this day is hopefully will be executed. There's a great graph. It's execution versus the idea. Have you ever seen it?
I don't know. I think I know the graph of the how much you think you know versus the knowledge, where it's like you think you know something. But this is different. Okay.
You could have an amazing idea.
Let me see if I can bring it up.
And if you don't execute it well, you'll lose money. You could have a really crappy idea, and if your execution's amazing, you could become a billionaire.
It'll work.
So what you really want is a good idea and good execution, or an excellent idea and okay execution, or amazing execution and a good enough idea. But that you need both. You need to choose a decent MVP, and you need to execute the MVP. Otherwise, you might as well just stay in bed and daydream about it and not
Right.
waste your time.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't
wasting
think
your
I can
time is
find anything
great
here, sorry.
learning. But yeah, it just shows it on a simple graph,
Yeah.
but it's so poignant.
That's probably one of those things where you see that once someone gets successful in business, they make a successful product or whatever, and then they sell it or what have you. They seem to always be able to just create new business after new business because it's like they figured out the game and they just like know what it takes to make a successful business. Whether the idea is great or not, almost doesn't even matter.
I think a lot of it comes back to whatever the magic of Musk was back in the day, especially, was setting up intelligent teams that will actually do your bidding, or I don't know if it was even his ideas, but whatever it is to actually, I mean, think of Apple. They're just part of it to me is the long run. So if you care about what you're doing, you're not going for a quick buck, and you just want to make something beautiful that might end up being the best in the world. And the most designs, obviously elegant, the simpler they are. And you think about long term, it's all about building a team who believes in that and then just slowly putting out products and refining them and continuing to go. And it blew my mind how long it took for Apple. They lost it yesterday again, but to become the most
what happened yesterday?
Market cap. NVIDIA passed them again for market cap.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't matter.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
But it took so long for them just to eclipse a lot of their competitors. And so now AI means NVIDIA's up there, but they're now like head and shoulder above everybody, including even Microsoft and Google or whatever.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs could never understand why it took so long, but
right, yeah.
But you knew it's like if they just keep doing what they're doing well and caring, they're going to be successful, and eventually they're probably going to be the most like wealthy company in the world, including, I think I don't know about now, but some of the work, like I think going to work for Apple would have the same feeling back in the day, I don't know about now, as NASA, where it's like a lot of people who worked there just wanted to,
they just want to be there.
They cared about it and whatever. So if you just have that vibe and you do it for a while, but yeah, it's creating that environment to execute.
Yeah. Which is difficult. I know I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, in that I've always been, you know what? I'm just going to do it alone. I'm just going to start something on my own. I'm not going to take any money. I'm just going to do something, and then I'll just grow from there, and then I'll just make it. And I've been doing that for like over like 10 years now. It's like, you
could make us run and cut us and there'd be no sweat or blood coming out of our bodies. We've sweat. The sweat equity and blood equity is gone.
It's gone. Yeah. So
but the beautiful thing is when it's gone is as long as you're not having to do too much to put food on the table, you've won if you get to the place where you enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point.
And to me, it's slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
That's what a professor once told me, and I appreciate it now. I didn't get it back then, but slow and steady is an enjoyable. It's not a race. It's funny, but slow and steady is enjoyable.
Yeah.
And it means, to me, it comes down to trying to make something that's world class and to properly learn it and do it. So if you have the luxury to do a slow and steady thing, it's great.
Yeah.
At the same time, depending on the product and how money hungry you are, you might want to like accelerate that process.
Yeah.
If you don't have the team, I guess what I'm saying is if you have the team, it could go quickly. If you don't and you're doing it on your own, the journey is still enjoyable. It takes longer, but say it took twice as long for you to do it yourself, could be just as, if not more enjoyable than doing it in half the time with help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that half the time with help, you wouldn't have learned, even two of those half the time with help, you may not have learned the foundation as well because you're more on the surface with other people helping versus if you're in the weeds and you don't die by the time you're finished a certain stage, you just become an expert. You master. I think a key word is trying to master something that you enjoy. And so for me, I'm still not even close, but I'm beginning to master software development and modern architecture and the reactive revolution, as some people would say it. So to me, it's just so much more fulfilling when you're like, hey, I'm here for the long haul. and I'm actually going to try to learn and master this, even though I'm way slower than I wish I was.
Right.
But when I get it, I'm really going to get it.
You're really going to get it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good thing that we can talk about M.U.L.E. I guess this is your invention. So, so you've gone through, your university, and then you have your own company, work at NASA, you're learning kind of all these things. And is it just a combination of all the things you've learned that you've decided that, okay, now I kind of have the knowledge that I need to go ahead and start to create something of my own?
It's just the way, I think it's just when you're kind of in that space, which I know you are too. It's like if you're involved in something, say a podcast, and you realize that you want to solve a problem, you might solve it for yourself, but immediately say, like, I think this other people would probably enjoy what I've done. It's kind of like building websites.
Yeah.
You're solving a problem by creating something better that will help all the others. So that's the way your mind, that's where you live, I can tell all the time. And so with that, I just kind of took a deep dive into the solar industry. When I was learning modern development, I was the first app, a friend of mine at the time who was also learning kind of the newest Swift language, one of the most modern languages out there, and Firestore, which is a great, to this day, best choice for a cloud database for certain things. You'd use something like BigQuery or whatever for some long-term analytics and AI, but Firestore is just an amazing kind of conduit. And so the first app, one day we're like, let's just do it. We made a Pokemon. It was when Pokemon Go came out.
Okay, yeah.
I've never played it, knew nothing about it.
No, my kids love Pokemon, so I know that, but
didn't get into it. It's just not my thing.
Sure.
But we realized, hey, if we build this Pokemon Go helper, because there's all kinds of missing things of the actual app that people were complaining about.
Okay.
If we kind of plug some of those holes, just why not choose this versus a thing that helps you find out where the best public bathrooms are, which would be a good app. But we were like, well, might be hard to get traction.
Okay.
So we built this Pokemon Go helper trying to use all the most modern tech. And yeah, of course, we got thousands of people downloading it and using it without any marketing or anything, just because it was
just from the Android store or the Apple store or whatever.
Yep. So it was just a good choice of a learning app that we knew, well, if we're lucky, someone will come in. It might take, if it takes off, it would probably really take off, and we might get offered money for the code base.
Yeah.
But didn't take off that much, and whatever. It was more learning.
More of a learning process. So you
but
just
mainly
pick something.
to have instant users where we could test it out and see if it's all working.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was kind of making all these different apps, including on Apple TV, and just learning the whole thing. And then my father decided to get solar on his roof. And I've always been kind of interested and was thinking about in the past an app for solar and getting into the industry. So as I learned more, within a couple of days, I was like, I'm making an app. And so for over a year, I built an app that's still in use every day, but it's not successful. But
for solar?
For the solar industry.
For the solar industry.
But really, it was for me, as I was getting into the solar industry, every aspect of selling solar to taking a project along, installing, and then even trying to maybe monitor after it was done. But it's kind of like building your own Swiss Army knife, saying, hey, since it could be the same with an Excel spreadsheet that a non-software developer does. It's like, I'm going to build this for me because it's really useful.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm building this for me, but with a culmination of everything I've learned, and including Firestore in the cloud and the most modern aspects of the programming Swift front end. And so, I made it I loved it for me, and kept adding these features, knowing, well, someday should I make the real one?
Mm-hmm.
And whoever used it in the company I was helping, it was like crack to them. Like when they would leave, they'd try to convince their company that we need this app. Yeah. So it was useful for a specific thing. But so then what was exciting is when I learned more. I don't know how we got down this road, but long story short, a year ago, I've just said, I was thinking about rewriting that, but I was like, I want something a little different. So I've trying to take everything I learned and writing one app to rule them all.
Okay, yeah.
But it's an app that deals with reactive programming and devices and the cloud on a front end. So I forget, we were talking about Your question was about.
Well, I was really kind of talking about M.U.L.E and kind of got started with that and what that company does. But now you're all on, which is okay. But excuse me. But yeah.
Yeah, please back to M.U.L.E. Oh, you were saying how I did. So when I was getting into the solar industry,
yeah,
and they were installing panels on my parents' roof, I was sitting there watching them one by one, pushing them up a ladder. At one point, the ladder slipped out. I mean, you could tell they knew what they were doing, but it was just like, are you kidding me? Is this how you guys do this? Oh, yeah. And they were proud of it. And they were strong. A lot of people wouldn't be able to carry,
these, and I'm just trying to picture it right now. They just have those regular ladders that you just kind of extend up, put
extension
on the roof,
ladder,
and they're just like hauling this stuff up.
Yep. They have different techniques. Some of them will be able to put it on their shoulder, and
like the shoulder. Oh, that's
very dangerous.
Yeah, no kidding.
Arduous. If there's any wind, you're either risking your life or you have to shut it down for the day. It's totally against every code imaginable.
Right, like the safety code. Yeah.
Yeah. So unionized shops probably would be forbidden to do it. A company where the owners cared about their employees would forbid it.
Right.
The company I was helping got a real general manager, and the first day said, there's not one more solar panel being lifted by hand to a roof.
Right.
Right now, I have a feeling in North America anyway, it's over 50% of panels get to rooftops by pushing. A lot of people will put it on the ladder and push it as they go up.
Yeah.
Code says you can't do heavy work on a ladder, number one. Yeah. Number two, you have to have 3 points of contact, and it's no longer 3 points, which could be a hip. It's 3 limbs of contact.
Okay.
Let alone, you're not allowed, you'd have to be standing. If you were standing with 3 solid points of contact, you might be allowed to help someone who's pulling a panel or something, but you're not allowed to lift your foot and go up another rung.
Right, because you can't move as soon as you lose that point of contact.
And they're just with all industries, as things slowly evolve, they're starting to clamp down more. And I mean,
actually take safety seriously of people.
I think falls and ladders may be the number one cause for injury and death on construction sites.
Yeah.
I called OSHA.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I was trying to do a little research, and I called OSHA in the States there, and the automated thing says, press 1 if you've had a fatality or loss of limb. That was the first.
Number 1. Oh, shit.
Number 2, 3, 4, 5. And so, and ladders and heights are the number one reason someone would press number 1.
Right. Yeah.
So that day I said, are you kidding me? And they said, no. And I started Googling it. And by the end of the day, I was like, yeah, this is crazy. All the other methods, I can see that they're kind of cumbersome, and this sucks for them. And then I started talking to them about, well, what if there was something that took it up your ladder? And they said, no, we're strong. But by the 17th panel, they were listening or whatever.
Right.
And then at the end, when I said, well, what if you could put your coffee on this device and take your coffee up to the roof? And they said, okay, Mike, we'll try it.
Now the coffee, well, we need the solar panels, whatever, but the coffee, yeah. So basically, just to kind of summarize this, you're helping your dad put on solar panels on his roof, and you're there, and you're seeing these guys being basically taking all the safety precautions out the wind and just hauling these solar panels on their back onto the roof. And you do some investigation and find out that there's really no safe solution for people to be able to bring solar panels onto top roofs. I would imagine
it's the same with shingles.
And
roof
really
shingles.
That as well too, because I would imagine the thing right now would be to probably hire like a crane or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I would imagine then, in business case, that's probably really expensive to bring a crane up.
It is, and I mean,
right?
Even shingles, almost all of them you'll get delivered, and they'll put them on the roof because you can put them on the roof. But there's all kinds of situations where they can't get in there, or you miss your window of opportunity.
When the crane could drive up.
But during the day, you're going to also have tools and shingles. Like you're always going to end up putting shingles on your shoulder, even if most of them get on there by crane or whatever.
Right.
Solar panels are a lot more tough to put on a roof when they're not attached.
Right.
They're big. If you sit them on a roof, they could slide off the wind. So it's more of a 1-by-1. Even if you wanted, think of a residential roof, you can't say, okay, take that entire crate and set it on this roof and we'll try to take them out of there. Right. So a flat roof might be easier. But then renting the hoist, expensive. Yeah. Buying the hoist, expensive. Getting it there, the timing. Then there's things called ladder hoists, which are specifically designed for this, but they're expensive and they're a nightmare to set up.
Oh, really? Okay.
Even if you're good, it can take 30 minutes, A lot of times it takes an hour, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, and they shut it down.
And then in here in Canada, the cold too, I imagine you don't want to be messing around with that stuff in the cold.
It's tough. The big drawback is they come with their own ladder that's not supposed to be for humans. So you have to construct a big, heavy ladder that gets bent, and you have to store somewhere. And it's like, do I have the right pieces from the right brand today?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same reason why to this day, when I'm controlling my volume on my television, I want a tangible, physical little button instead of a touch screen that I look over and try to slide. It's just like, it's that ease of use and the barrier of the second it's going to take a little while or whatever. It's like, no,
you lost them.
Let's just get it done. We can do this today. Let's not try to set that thing up again.
And I think that's why people just say, the hell with the safety rules anyways. I'm just going to haul this up because I just want to get my job done.
And if you had the safety rules, it would put a lot of, it's just, it's the best a lot of companies can do to survive is to say, if we tried to do this by safety, we wouldn't survive. And so it's a lot of organizations look the other way. It's just part of the industry, but it's slowly changing.
Yeah. Okay. So you see this problem now and you're like, okay, when did you decide like, okay, I'm going to actually figure out if I could like create something here to help solve this problem?
Oh, the first day.
Oh, you're just like, oh, I love this.
Like, if you think you've onto something, get excited about it. It's like, okay, well, until I figure out it's not a good idea, I'm going to start running with this as a fun new hobby.
Okay. So
and that's all it really is. It's a hobby that's slow and steadily coming.
Especially for you, the way that you're thinking
well,
about
we
things.
talked about sharing an idea. So do you know Willie's Poutine on Blower Street in Halifax?
No,
Pizza Corner?
I know Pizza Corner, but I don't know that poutine.
Famous corner. Willie's opened a poutineery. It's called Willie's Poutine or Willie's or something. And
I must have seen it, but anyways.
Probably like 15 years ago. And it just took the city by storm. And even though it's always going to be called Pizza Corner, half the people were getting poutine now instead of pizza, and it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
That business was doing great. And lo and behold, a couple years later, Smokes, I think it is, a brand
from like Smokes Poutine or whatever. Yeah.
Opened right across the street.
Ooh.
The owner lost his shit, I've been told by one of his staff. Thought life was over. He was so angry.
Yeah.
Sales doubled.
Yeah. More people are coming in for poutine.
It's just showing people. It's like, so it's the same with like the ladder mill. If someone knocks it off or someone comes out with one tomorrow, the odds are high. All of the money they spend on marketing and awareness is probably going to help us.
Help you get more customers.
So a lot of people say, I mean, we're lucky that we have a patent and there's an element of it just by chance. That's the thing. It seems so obvious, but it's not. It has to pass for patents, have to pass a non-obvious test.
Yeah.
But because it's a couple levels removed, it's not obvious to get there probably. And we went through all these prototypes. We think it's just the best way for sure. And if someone said you can't do it that way, we'd be like, maybe it's not worth even going forward. So we got a patent on that. And even if that doesn't hold up, the next thing's the way a patent works is you start with the big thing. And if a judge says no, then you go, okay, what's the more specific thing? And you keep going down until they say, yeah, that's fine. So even if it's a few levels down, it would be really good. I don't want to stop somebody from making them. It just protects us a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah, and it might make us look better for investors and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah.
But if somebody came out with one because we were taking too long, I'd be like, cool. They just, how much money did they spend on kind of educating and all the permitting and getting the industry to start saying, hey, it might not be ideal because we can't push a button and they magically just go up on a drone or something, but it's better and it will save lives and it's way faster and it's got all these benefits where it's better than the status quo for sure.
Yeah.
Because I think it would take, if you went out there, 3 minutes, I think, because it uses your existing extension ladder. You just slap this thing on, put a hoist at the top, and then it's a wireless remote. The key is it's just you're using your own extension ladder. You're not getting, and the ladder hoists, which have their own ladders, they're just big and bulky, and they're not. It's like they're not designed by Steve Jobs for sure.
At least yet. Anyways, so basically, it's a thing that someone could take, put it onto their own ladder, put the solar panels up, press a button, and it just lifts it right up to the
like
roof.
A trolley or and same with shingles, tools, batteries, beverages. Got to have a beverage holder.
Yeah, it's got to have, well, of course. Yeah, got to get that coffee.
It's funny, when I was looking through the patents, the first thing you do when you're thinking about a product and patents and search is like saying, okay, well, is there a big patent? It was the same with that Pokemon app we did. We was like, obviously, eventually we got a cease and desist like a long time later.
Oh, did you really?
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, we put in all kinds of copyright stuff and that we knew we could take out. But, going in, you're like, well, this is high risk because that company could shut us down in a second.
For sure. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm looking through the patents and there's only about 3 or 4 that start to talk about it, like, wow, there's just nothing. There's no big hurdle that I can see.
Yeah.
But one of them was from Solar City, Elon Musk's solar company.
Okay. Interesting.
And in the abstract, it was talking about it. Like, it wasn't really what we were making, but one of the few that I could find that was in the same vein. And the very last sentence in the abstract was, could also be used for beverages.
Oh, really? Oh, geez, that's funny. Yeah. You show that. It's just, I guess it's just a universal thing.
It's important, man. Well, it's the same with your remote control. It's like, if I can get my batteries up and down to recharge and get my coffee up and down more easily, like that's a seller.
Yeah, just or into your couch, right? Where they have the movie seats, right?
They'll be sleeping with the M.U.L.E before you know it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So where are you guys at now with the company and the product?
I've been so deep in this app that I've been writing. It's just been kind of collecting dust in a way, but it's also our main SolidWorks designer. He's got a very busy life. He's become a friend. He's very talented, but we're trying to finish a final important accessory that's just needed if you're going to buy this. It's like, well, yeah, you should get this accessory.
Okay.
And so it's just that final thing. And so happily he started this last Saturday, finally carved out time from his job and his family to go.
Yeah.
And he's always like apologetic. I'm like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's not a race. I'm not. He's like, you can try to find somebody else. I'm like, no, you're the person.
You're the guy.
We're in this together. No stress. I know how much you enjoy it, so it's your job just to work on carving out a few hours here and there, because it's only a few days of, well, might be like a week of work for him. So that's kind of stalled things, but I'm doesn't matter to me. I'm not in a race. And the other thing, when we were in the accelerators, like, I'm very busy, and it's just like, I know, what do I enjoy doing the most? I love and enjoy aspects of startups, but I don't want to be a CEO bringing a product to market in the construction industry, in the solar industry. When I was 22, maybe I'd be like, okay, I'm going to really dive into this. I've been in the construction solar industry for 3 or 4 years now before I've happily kind of gone into this new project app.
Yeah.
And I was like, I learned a lot. I didn't have a background in construction. It's a different world, neat. But I'm like, I don't want to go. I want to be involved in making a website that goes viral like the Antra product.
Okay. Yeah.
You build it, they will come. But I really don't want to be navigating all of the regulations and flying down to Idaho to meet with roofing companies and really the CEO stuff for this type of product. I would, if someone else was really pushing it and I would love to do all kinds of aspects of it. The problem would be, well, it's going to take time from the project I'm really passionate about. So how much time can I take? But I kind of want to, and I'd like to do a lot of it, but not all of it. So we're kind of looking for a CEO.
Yeah.
Or a COO, or just one really savvy business person who can push to the finish line.
That's done that kind of stuff before, that have gotten something from past the development stage into like it's actually on the shelves at Home Depot or whatever.
Yeah, we were talking about like someone in a way who could build a team, or just be almost the business person to say, okay, let's take this to market.
Yeah, I think it's good for you to know that, like, you know yourself well enough to say that I'm not the person to do that, and it's,
doesn't stress me.
Don't want to do that. It's like, okay, well, we'll see if we can find somebody. There's got to be. I do know a few people here in the area that are into the construction business. So I'll just see if I can.
Other than the accelerator, just kind of putting the word out, I have done nothing in actually trying to find somebody. It's funny, like, unless I really enjoy something, which it's funny, once I get into it, I enjoy almost everything, but I'm just like, I'd rather code today than try to find the COO or
phone
CEO.
Calls and do business deals.
It's funny, the 1 or 2 days of doing it, I'd be like, man. And then I'd be like, oh, I don't know if I want to code today because I love finding a leader.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. So one thing that I love, doing videos and stuff like that too. I'd love to work with you to just, if you wanted to make some kind of promotional video or whatever that you can have, just let me
That's
know.
one of the
Let me know
keys.
whenever. I'd
Yeah.
love to just.
It's funny if
just
I had
take
more time.
these
Like,
cameras and just test it out and just
do you know
have
what
some fun.
I miss everything about film, especially story. But I also like was becoming quite a decent editor, and I love lighting and everything. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
I
it's
had more
fun.
time, I'd be like, hey, can I help you edit your podcast? I don't have the time.
You don't have the time. Yeah, no, yeah, it does take a lot of time for sure.
And like including, I was using the kind of the newest, latest, greatest Final Cut the other day, and I was like, yeah, I like the new paradigm compared to the old one. And it's so much easier in certain ways. And yeah, I wish I could clone myself.
Yeah.
I'd be all over editing your podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to, like, my vision for it would be the homepage. I kind of made a mock-up. I think I showed you once, where it just basically is saying, duh. not in a pretentious way.
Yeah.
And I just envision, as you're scrolling the page, as you scroll, it's advancing or rewinding the frames,
Yep.
just to show this thing going up
You
a
can see the
ladder
lighting
and
and
down
at the same
with
time.
solar panels. It's like a video is worth, it's all you need. It's just like people be like, whoa. And then as you go down the page, it goes to the next video, which instead of solar panels is shingles.
Yeah, right.
And one of the videos would be great. I think it's a drone is the way to do it, where it would slowly be watching it. And as you scroll down, it just does a little 360 underneath the ladder and back out.
Oh, interesting.
But just beautifully shot, cinematic, nicely done. But mainly, someone in the industry is looking at it and says, like, just like if it was a Kickstarter or whatever,
Well, they'd instantly get
impulse buys would be insane. They'd be like, that looks amazing, buy. And then hopefully the majority would use it and say, this is great, versus saying, yeah, it's good, but we're not using it. Well, they still bought it.
Yeah, for
Maybe
sure.
they'll give it to a friend.
Yeah. So that's cool. Okay, so you're talking about you have this thing, you've created this product now, and you're just kind of like, well, kind of putting it aside because it's not the thing that really excites you so much. So what is it now that you're working on?
It's not putting it aside versus just not having the time.
Well, but you're wanting to put your time into something else.
Yeah,
then, right?
yeah.
So I guess
choosing something else.
I guess that thing is more like you have more passion towards that thing. So I guess like what is it now then? That's, I mean, you're talking about, what is it? You said something about what's that term you just used? Something about
reactive.
Yeah, like reactive. Like just maybe just explain. I guess
it's a brand new world.
What gets you going? Yeah.
It's exciting. It's just, as I slowly become a real software developer, it's weird to speak like that, but there's so much difference from you being able to do something versus starting to try to actually master something, whatever that means. But really say, hey, I get it. I know how to do this properly and build something that's from the ground up the best current way to do it. And it just ends up, the result is it's world class and might do things that legacy systems just aren't capable of doing, and all these things. So anyway, in the past, like, it's been about 10 years that the word reactive has really been known by developers, becoming more mainstream. Yeah. But it's really only the last 5 years that it's become more viable, and developers are starting to shift to this new paradigm of what you'd call reactive programming.
Yeah.
Or you'd write things declaratively. The opposite being imperative, where you're kind of telling something everything what it needs to do, versus declarative says, hey, I just want you to react in this way.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about how all the little ways that
like
you're
how
doing
it's actually done. Could you, for the layman, could they describe it almost as the difference between, I could be wrong on this, but the difference between typing in something in Google versus typing in something in like ChatGPT or an
100%. 100%.
ChatGPT, or you just type the same thing. Google's like, hey, I have a question. And just like, well, here's some pages you can read about it, whatever.
Yeah.
But ChatGPT, it gives you ways to go about how to solve your problem. And just, it goes so much more.
Yeah.
Right.
It basically, you tell it what you want the end result to be, and you don't worry about how it arrives there.
Right. Yeah.
One way I would show someone the power of ChatGPT is I might say, well, think of Agassi in his second prime in 2000 and whatever.
Tennis player Agassi.
Think if Andre Agassi was playing Blake Shelton today. Can you tell me how you think they do, and which what you think their techniques would be, especially, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Full analysis of how their two gameplays would coincide and how Agassi's return would counter. And
Right.
depending on the year, I said for Agassi, it'd be a very different answer.
Right.
And then if you ask another question to go deeper, like somebody my mother knows was having a procedure. It's actually my aunt was having a procedure with a heart. It's a normal one, but they'd have to go from one chamber to the other. And my mother was a nurse and used to you'd go in the chamber where you're doing something.
Okay.
But they're actually coming in the reverse veins to come into the other chamber of the heart. One pulls blood, one pushes blood. She couldn't figure out, because it's different than it used to be, what they did. So she did a lot of Googling and research, realized they actually make a little hole between the two cavities in the heart and push this camera through that hole.
Okay.
Sounds crazy
stuff. Yeah.
With all the blood, and you're actually making holes in your heart, but it's a common procedure.
Right.
It's not. So she went through a lot of stuff. I asked ChatGPT, gives me the answer right away. And I said, okay, let's put ourselves right there when it's entered the heart and you're doing the hole. What area of the walls, how would you select? What about all the blood? A surgeon, a heart surgeon, would be like ChatGPT's now, I think, I'm not going to go deep into this, but starting to, I think one test recently, top 300 software developers in the year it ranked. It's top maybe 0.1% for LCAT and MSAT now or something. Like it's just, and it's just going to get better and better with generative. So anyway, reactivity, that's kind of what we're talking about. So when I ask about the tennis players, I would have to ask Google, go through each specific web page, try to learn about each.
Oh, you would have to like write it down yourself and keep your own spreadsheet.
Take hours. And the funny thing is, at the end of it, you'd be making educated guesses.
Yeah.
GPT could be hallucinating, but there's a 99 point something % chance now that it's accurate. You're always going to check the answers and say,
yeah,
you just told me this, but somehow you mixed up Agassi for Sampras or something.
Yeah, right.
But as long as you look at the thing, 99+% of the time, it's right on the money.
It's getting pretty good.
And what's funny is, if you really do the research, you're like, reading this, I'm more sure of my answer than if I spent 4 hours myself where I'm not an expert in that field. Because it's like GPT went out and asked all these sports analysts who know their field by aggregating and doing the magic.
Yeah.
So that's a great analogy to reactive programming, where if you can abstract all that stuff underneath on how it gets there and just ask for a result, and it does a really good job, it's powerful.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. So my mind's going off in so many different ways. So knowing this information about reactive programming, is there any way, I'm just trying to put this in the context of a new business owner or a new entrepreneur trying to figure out how they could, get their market or their product to market faster. Is there any way they could leverage this type of like reactive programming into what they're doing? Like, is it maybe just even incorporating AI into the stuff that they're doing? Or is there a way that they can change just how their mindset is? Like
both. Like if you were just creating a soap dish, the way you produce it totally, it depends. Like if it's not handmade.
Right. Yeah.
If you're an expert in reactive stuff on your shop floor, it's going to react to all the equipment making it to detect if anything's going wrong, and it's going to make it's a better way of doing things where you're going to produce better product, and just it's the evolution of creating something.
Yeah.
But as far as the product itself, might not be that much. It's funny, if you brainstorm with GPT, here's my soap dish, blah blah blah, made of melamine, blah 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 blah. Give me some ideas on maybe how I could improve the next version. Great to brainstorm on.
Yeah.
Better than most of if you asked me about it, it would do better than I would in trying to think about how to make a better soap dish and why it should use 90% melamine and 10% unobtainium.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it permeates. I mean, it's always been here. It permeates life. A reactive system is like Halifax water. If that system was fully reactive, it would have known in advance if there's a power outage. It would know exactly if there's a generator or not.
Yeah.
It would know the level of fuel, and it would know the leakage and the levels of the water. And
it's because like all systems are working together as like one.
Yeah, and if you architect it if you just slap a reactive thing on top of the existing infrastructure, it could be pretty ugly and buggy and whatever. If you can build it from scratch with beautiful modularity and components in that reactive mindset where each thing does its own base thing, and then the next layer does this, and then the top layer, you have somebody who's never touched a computer before says, can you let me know, their first day on the job, can you let me know if anything changes that I should know about?
Yeah.
And that's all they say?
Yeah.
The system would actually
Would
do it maybe better than someone who had worked there for 10 years and was a water PhD person.
that just because it takes like all that experience that they have, and it actually quantifies it into like actual things that
it's the brains of the humans who build it, each component, knowing they're the experts who built it, combined now with the brains of generative artificial intelligence
and the computing power,
where it might say that all the experts built it and they didn't detect anything wrong. With power grids, this is the big one. They didn't detect anything wrong, but GPT detected abnormalities that a human would have happened, gone, and a human would never have detected unless they went through and sifted through the data for years and said, hey, this happened.
Yeah.
GPT might say, you got something going on here that I think raises the level, at least checking out what it is.
Yeah. I would imagine that we're talking about like a whole city or municipality, like changing their whole way that they're monitoring their water systems or whatever.
Yep.
I would imagine, I could be wrong about this, that this would be a very difficult and expensive thing for like a city or whatever to implement, because you'd have to almost rip apart every system that they have now and replace it.
Well,
or do you just go one by one?
Well, it's the history of the world.
I guess.
You're slowly improving, rebuilding. Like in California, I'm guessing there's going to be a lot more concrete houses going up.
or some other way too, to be able to have some kind of system to be able to gauge when a fire and where it could happen, what to do against it.
It's not probably that smart to build a wooden house down there anymore.
Yeah.
So just over time, things get replaced out of necessity or slowly creep along. So whatever it is, unless if the world survives the next 100 years, slowly, and for me, it's exciting because it's an opportunity. It's only really, to me, been the past 2 years, and I'm just becoming an expert. I told you the other day, like, GPT is like the best teacher for a lot of things.
Yeah.
You can not just ask it to teach you something. You can say, use analogies and tell it to me like I'm 12.
Yeah.
And then once you're getting your head around it, okay, could you stop using analogies and tell it to me like 17?
Yeah.
And also do it knowing that I'm afraid of the dark.
Whatever. Yeah.
You're basically honing your professor to teach you in the way that works for you.
Yeah. And it remembers what you've prompted it as well too. So
it has a certain decent memory. But what were we? I just digressed there. What was the question that led to that?
Well, I guess we're just talking about, like, you were making the point that just because something is going to be difficult to implement doesn't mean that we don't do it, right? Because my question was like, it's going to be very difficult and expensive for a whole municipality to change the whole system. But it's like, no, it doesn't matter. You still got to do it because it's going to be better, even if it's, piece by piece.
Why I'm excited, and if you look at the long thing, like even just software itself was a huge revolution, just like the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
But what's kind of neat that people wouldn't realize is it's only been maybe the last 2 years that reactive programming has really come so viable and mature that you can build something from the ground up from scratch, like an architect for reactivity.
Right.
And so what that means is, even if you think there's a modern company out there and they have their systems running, say it's like Sobeys monitoring the temperature of the refrigerators, they could have a cutting edge system that's 5 years old. The foundation of that is legacy in certain aspects. Yeah. So to me, it doesn't need to be changed. It might be good enough, but it's kind of exciting when you're in this space, because you're like, pretty much 99% of existing systems out there, including Halifax Water, are legacy systems, even if they were built 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's a big paradigm shift and a beautiful one, because the other thing is you can slowly make something more reactive. The best thing, like a company who really knows what they're doing and has the resources, would have a separate team Like, I think Musk said the other day something about replacing the whole stack for Twitter. For
Oh,
X.
did he really? I didn't
Yeah.
hear that. Okay.
But he doesn't even really know I don't think he really even knows what the stack is, because
Right.
he's just, I'm not going to get into it. So the only way I'd drive a Tesla was off a cliff and he was at the bottom.
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. That's
Okay, I'm not going any
strong.
further. I feel like kindness is a word that comes to mind when I think of this. If I feel like someone isn't kind, it irks me.
Mm.
So anyway,
just getting on to those guys. I look at Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and a lot of things that I've heard from people. Again, I don't know these guys personally or what have you, but they say that they're just very difficult to work with. And is it almost the same thing in terms of, here's Steve Jobs, like, some people are like, oh, I'd go for a meeting, I'd be crying after talking to him or whatever. Like,
Yep.
he was just really hard on people.
Yep.
Is it? And the same thing with Elon Musk. It's like, oh, it's a great experience, but never work for him again.
Yeah,
kind of
there's
thing, right? 'Cause
the
they just don't-
there's the personal life. Are they a good father and all that? Which
Yeah.
you can separate and say, well, I'm just thinking of this person in this aspect of their life. I'm not gauging their entire life, and they could have been horrible in some ways. But underneath it, there's if someone's really hungry for power
Mm.
and is aligning themselves with potential oligarchy and everything else. I don't want to get into politics, but
Yeah.
if you're observing a power grab and principles that seem unkind surrounding it, then it's I'd rather just work all day and not think about it too much and just say, hey, I'm just trying to do my best.
Just doing your best. Yeah. And
unless I'm on the front lines
Yeah.
of trying to do something about that environment, I'm just like, hey, I'm just going to do my thing. And hopefully that will make the world a better place instead of worrying or wasting too much thought on things that I don't like.
That's a good thing. That's it reminds me of something that I don't know, Jordan Peterson, he's the Canadian guy. One of his 12 rules for life, I think I'm just going to be paraphrasing, but it's the whole clean your rooms. Like, make sure your house is in order before you try to fix all the other houses or whatever, right? So it's like, if kind of what you're saying is like, if you're just being kind and focusing on yourself, that'll help you, enable you to go out and maybe provide some value to the world or whatever it is.
Well,
right?
especially if you feel like you're building something that's meant for the world to use. Your house, it's all connected. It's not, to me, selfish if you're actually trying to build something that's for everyone, and you're just really happily focused on that, whether it's by yourself or with a team. Unless I'm on the front lines actively trying to change something, I feel like I do better than, like, when I was in my 20s, I used to think, should I be going to Africa to help starving people and just these things? And maybe I should have. I don't know, but it was really difficult. It made me very sad, and there was a disconnect in my psyche of feeling guilty and like I wasn't doing enough. And I wasn't doing enough. But what I realized is, instead of flying off to another part of the world, as long as you really work hard and you try to be kind in your own life, that does touch the rest of the world, even if you're not physically standing there and actively involved in a specific problem. As long as what you're doing is for the better good, it's gonna, and it's just, that was a big relief for me in life to start realizing. It's like, hey, I don't have to lose too much sleep. Like, if I sat and thought, like, animals are just, I like animals more than people.
Yeah.
More than myself. It's a weird thing to say, but
like pets or whatever, dogs.
Well, animals generally aren't evil. Some of them are, but if I thought right now of the animals that might be suffering in the woods, like, I'd become in a bad mood and I could think about it all day, and it would put me in a hole. Like, the ones that might be out there caught in a trap. Like, it's horrible to think about all the suffering. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that very often.
Yeah.
Unless I'm actually going to work in that field or create a product to help the poor little bunnies and deers.
Squirrels and everything. Yeah.
It's like, why would I should be aware of it, and a certain percentage of my time should be like just knowing that I'm empathetic and I'm not blind to it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I can just keep trying to do something productive in my own life, and it might end up helping Bambi. You never know.
Being realistic in what you can actually kind of accomplish.
It's all so connected.
That's tough too. Like me, for when I did my undergrad degree, I was like an environmental science, so I was all about the animals and ecology and all that kind of stuff. But it's one thing too about the animal kingdom, though, that it's rough out there. Like there's a lot of suffering that just with the animals themselves. And you watch those nature shows and you see like lions ripping apart zebras like alive. It's like, oh my goodness, like could you? It's a cruel world out there, you know.
Yeah, if you had a window to see that, like including in a way, I'm empathetic with animals because they didn't ask for it. They might not know any better. Humans, like say it was Ukraine, it would be even more devastating if you really looked at a child that was suffering in Ukraine because they're more aware. They actually have awareness, the human spark.
Suffering, yeah.
So that's even worse in many ways. Humans who know better and get in those situations is like, well, I feel more for Bambi because they really didn't ask for this person to set that trap. But
yeah, well, I see that's a different thing too. I think what we're talking about too is like the damage or the harm that humans do onto animals with those things. Yeah.
I mean, it's a crazy subject, but the moral for me is unless I'm on the front lines and actively unless I choose action for something specific, I find worry and guilt just takes away from my actual true productivity. So it's like a get out of jail free card or something. But I'm like, hey, as long as I feel like I am working, like I work 80 to 90 hours a week hard. I went to bed at 6 a.m. last night. I should have a dragon tattoo on me. I just love it. But yeah, as long as
you might as well stay up.
Really? I got my 4-hour
the 4-hour window.
But yeah, as long as I feel like, hey, I still feel like I'm creating and productive and trying to be kind each day, then working 80 or 90 hours a week really hard on something you think is useful, it gives you meaning where I don't feel like I have to feel and spend a lot of time thinking about Bambi.
No, I love what you're saying there. It's just it's almost, talk about unconventional mindset, but it's just having a different mindset. I think that a lot of people have is like just combine the idea of being kind and wanting to do nice things for others. And the one thing that I like to think about it is that it's almost creating value for other people. If you can do something in your life that is just giving value to somebody, that can fill you with a sense of purpose and satisfaction. And like you say, like contentment, like you feel as if like I'm waking up in the morning, I'm doing something that's really good. I'm kind, providing value, creating things. I'm fulfilling that kind of need to just always wanting to be learning and improving myself. And at the end of all of that stuff, you can wake up in the morning and you could just go through your day not having to, like you said, feel sad about this or that, or the things that you can't really control, but you're doing what you can to, to be the best person that you can be. Which I just love it.
Kumbaya time. Yeah, it's from, I don't listen to, I wish I was in tune with lyrics more, but one of Jewel's song, Hands, has a line. It's, in the end, only kindness matters. And there's another line in there, something about worry is wasteful. And it's just, it's I think it's true.
Do you think in today's world do you think people are more kind or less kind, or do you think it's just magnified for what we see kind of on social media? That because social media is almost designed with algorithms, it's designed in a way to almost just amplify people just creating the drama, right? So, but do you think like face to face, people are more or less kind, maybe than like 30 years ago? I don't know.
I think social media and the internet have really, in many ways, have caused more discord and lack of kindness than otherwise. And it surprises me how many people are still glued into Facebook and X and these things where if used right, sure, but I don't get it myself. And I feel like I went through my internet phase when I saw the magic of Unix and the magic of the Mac UI. And that would have been when I was probably 17, 18.
Okay.
So that would have been 1990.
Okay.
And then saw the magic of the internet and then used there was just really low level ways to chat and bulletin boards, the very beginnings of what social media is now.
Yeah.
And I feel like I went through that phase for a year or two back then. And it was magical. It was weird. It was like, oh my God, I can talk to someone across the world and they don't know who I am and all of these things. And yeah, I feel like it was a bit of a phase for me.
Yeah.
But the thing that I don't get sometimes is all these people who experienced social media and the internet for the first time 20 years ago, it seems like a never-ending phase for some people. Other people, I think they're saying, I never hear someone say, yeah, I quit Facebook and I'm sad that I did.
Yeah, so it's usually not that way. It's the other
I don't
way
know
around.
why it's so hard or why it doesn't naturally occur that other people are like, do you know what? I don't have enough time in my life for my family and friends and the real things that I do and real friends online versus so much garbage.
Yeah.
Including, do you even know if you're talking to AI, is your new Facebook friend a real person?
Yeah, that's another thing too. You're talking about that whole the AI and
you're catfished by computers now.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. Like I think of like dating apps now, and I'm so glad that I don't have to worry about that stuff because you hear about that stuff. You think you're talking to an actual human? Is it just a bot? I don't know.
But it blows my mind too that so many parents let their children, and I think a lot of parents just don't get it, like how easily they can get addicted to the social media, let alone what they can find on the web.
Yeah.
It's just,
and they can go down the rabbit hole.
I'm surprised that there's not a high percentage of parents. I think some of them are finally getting it, but that are saying, I'm really going to clamp down more on my kid, even though they're going to cry every day because all their friends at school have their own open access to the web.
Well, it's one of the reasons my kids are homeschooled, and they're 18 and 16 now.
Yeah.
And they don't have phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still getting over that you're old enough to.
I'm how old am I? I'm 44. I'm going to be 45 soon in April. So
you don't look a day over 31. The love fest.
So and that was kind of done on purpose to make sure that have the foundation first to know who you are and know what your values are, and then you're better able to deal with trolls or whatever it is that you're going to see online to have, like you say, have that kindness in your heart to know what's good to say, what's not good to say. But
I just want to say one thing though. I feel preachy or something. It's just like I don't know what I'm doing. I've had a lot of struggles in my life. I've made all kinds of mistakes, and I'm like, I'm in a good mood right now. I'm very positive, but I definitely, I'm just trying to share, I guess, that I'm slowly feel like I'm getting to a place where I wake up in the morning excited about what I'm doing, and that if somehow, I just hope everybody is also heading towards that place and realizing if they're not like decades of my life unhappy, and that it can be a slow process to try to turn it around. And I mean, it's never finished, but I think the core of this is talking about choosing an MVP, trying to become a master in that area, and caring about saying, I want to build a world-class product, whether it's goals in your life or a product.
Yeah.
It's just like, I just, that's what I think this conversation is mainly about, is just, if you're not happy, is just continuing to say, hey, it's not over yet. Keep pushing, and you got to be in jail a long time before you actually appreciate not being in jail.
Yeah. That was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you is,
I haven't been in jail.
No, have you been in jail? Have you
drunk tank a couple times, but
no, those are stories. If you want to tell those stories, we can definitely tell those stories. I was going to ask you, it's like, if there was somebody that was listening today that was feeling that they were stuck, they were feeling that they didn't know how to get out of feeling stuck, or feeling like they don't know what they want to do with their lives, what would you say to them to help them turn around their life and to get going off there? But you've pretty much already just answered it. So
everything's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's all relative. And if you're going through really hardship, that's if you can endure, it means at the end, it's going to mean everything is so much rosier
on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that it's a process, and the longer the process and the more failures you have, if you can get through it, if you can endure, everything's okay.
Yeah. No, it's good. No,
it includes if things get bad enough and you decide to take your own life. It's like, you know what? You lived, everything's okay. Hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Yeah. Well, no kidding.
Hopefully you endure through that, and just know that it's a long process. And I think the other main thing is just to have some level of normalcy. And it sounds selfish to say, think of other suffering going on in the world right now. And you might have like deep depression is as bad as any suffering in war, I believe. So your suffering could be just as much as a physical combat zone. But as if you can get yourself out of that lowest low level, then I think relativity is important to say, do you know what? I woke up in Canada today and I'm not worried about a missile falling and I can put food on the table. And mainly I have enough, I can carve out some hours this week to think about what my minimum viable product is.
Yeah. So you suffered from depression?
I've had bouts of depression and just existential angst through the gills, and I think the whole process of just feeling like you're just being productive and creative was a big one. And
you mean to get you through it?
No, just feeling like that you have purpose in your life and you're doing something meaningful somehow. But I think that the other main thing for me is I just lost my train of thought.
We were just talking about depression and how I guess maybe what are the things in your life that maybe got you to that state, or
it's not being afraid to just kill your ego, kill it. It's not a loss to say, holy shit, did I just waste 20, 30 years of my life? Who am I? It feels like a loss. You haven't lost yourself.
Yeah.
But you really got to just be okay with just saying, do you know what? I'm okay.
Yeah.
Like this ego thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's the tough thing is to not be too hard on yourself and say, I'm not a very nice person, or I wasn't a very honest person, or I wasn't living a good life and it's over now. Like it's not over unless you're dead. So it's not being afraid to just accept that it's like, hey, I'm not really the person maybe I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to start with a fresh slate and not feel like I've wasted my life.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's a difficult thing to do, because we were talking about earlier when I was saying about me is that, I feel like I spent the past 10, 12 years trying to build something, trying to create some type of business or whatever. But it's like, how far have I even gotten in this whole process? Because I don't have my $1 million yet. I don't have all these big things. It's like, well, have I just wasted all this time? And I guess for me, in terms of what I try to think about is that like, no, it's not wasting time. I've been enjoying the process for the most part. I'm learning things along the way, and I know that I'm going to get there, or at least I'm going to have fun to get there.
Time is a lot of it's the time is the crazy thing, is like letting go, especially say you're young and you're like, oh my God, I did 2 years in this program at school. I can't change now. Think at our age, looking back, 2 years and you're 22 and you're stressed over it versus
it's nothing.
20 years maybe that you're saying, holy cow, for 20 years, I feel like I was blind or something. So that letting go of the just that abiding, being the dude and trying to abide, just like just saying it is what it is. And time is a funny thing like that. Like I would not be the person I am today without feeling like 20 years of bad decisions in many respects. It's gone. What am I gonna do? I'm still alive. And
you've learned from it.
100 is the new 70. Like they're closer to curing aging. Like think if
that's
we
a
live,
whole nother podcast that we get into.
Think if we live to 110, who knows? Which we easily could. It could be higher.
Yeah.
If we live to 110 versus when we were younger and thinking maybe we'll live to 90, you can subtract 20 years off your life. That means you're 24 and I'm 32 going on 17.
Or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So time is weird like that. And we might have this luxury of, if we want it, we might have 10 or 20 or 30 extra years at the end that we weren't expecting. So it's just insane about how much time can stop someone from moving forward and feeling like they're stuck.
Yeah. So all of that being said, in terms of you've experienced so much, you've learned so much, you've learned to let some stuff go, and you're in the present. all of that being said, if you were to travel back to your younger self at 20 years old, what advice would you give them, or what thing would you say, the words of wisdom that hopefully, assuming you would listen, like what is that thing you would tell them to, maybe help them along the journey?
For myself, I don't know if there's anything. I just feel like I gotta get burned to move forward.
Yeah.
So,
like, don't be afraid to fail.
One thing I would have said is maybe try to, like, in some respects, I'm surprised I'm still alive. There's a few things that have happened here and there that I'm just like could have gone either way.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's one thing I would have said is like, just try to be like, you don't have to wear sunscreen, but just try to be a little bit more careful in these situations. And it wouldn't make any difference, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if anything, I would have tried to instill the excitement about creating a minimum viable product.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's a focus of feeling like you really. Well, I think the other thing is to say you don't have one passion out there that you're hoping you find someday. You have a bazillion of them.
Yeah.
And each day you're like, I don't think I'll ever find my true passion. Maybe one will rise to the top, but there's not one. It's like, if right now I was sentenced, and it'd be a happy sentence away to get involved in helping behind the scenes of this podcast, I'd be in a kid and candy store with the Sony A7 cameras,
whatever. Yeah.
I'd be getting mounts and incredible size lens, and I'd be just learning the newest thing. And it doesn't really matter. Like, I would be so excited and passionate about it because it's exciting when you really try to learn something and get deep into it and try to like do the world's best version of something.
So it sounds like you're really into just personal development, personal growth, and just being okay with having multiple different things you're interested in, almost as if you have different seasons in life. Well, you know what, at this point in my life, I'm just really passionate about this. And then, you know what, I'm okay with it changing, in 6 months or in a year.
Well, and I think at any moment, you're still passionate about all those things. It's just like, what's in the forefront that you're spending your time on.
Yeah.
And if I was sentenced to be someone's butler who was a musician, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so passionate about music.
Yeah. But if it was a butler of a roofer, maybe not so much.
The M.U.L.E would be on the market,
That's
man.
true. Okay. Maybe, I don't know, somebody who's digging coal into mine. I don't know, something that you might not be interested in, but yeah.
Simple things like this evolved a little bit, but I think my dad coined it multi-use lift equipment after we had called it the M.U.L E.
Oh, really? Oh,
because it is all about being modular, where you can put different things on, whether it's shingles or solar panels or a beverage holder or a thing that your DeWalt batteries go in. So it's very modular.
Yeah.
And then this solar app I wrote was still is called this. I kind of like this name
Photon
for the product I'm
like
building.
that.
But you see the simplicity, sometimes a brand or whatever.
Yeah.
Less is more unless you really think you've got something.
Yeah. Photon is really good though. Have you?
It's not good enough though, because it's not fast enough.
You don't think so?
Teleportation.
Oh, you mean the Photon? I'm like, that takes you travel pretty fast.
It's a flux capacitor, man. Photons are slow now.
Yeah, it's like that stuff's that's 2021. We need something.
To me, though, Photon does capture the vibe of a reactive system built on the most modern tech out there. So it's a cool name.
Well, there's lots of things. I mean, there's like Electron, which is another. I think that's a framework to build applications or whatever. So it's
funny. Like I tried to copyright it, and it's taken in Europe. I don't need to copyright.
I was say there's probably a lot of Photon.
There's
stuff
not
out there.
that many though.
Oh,
it's
really?
crazy. Yeah, I have photon.ca, and it's funny how few people use it. Yeah, but
yeah,
name isn't important.
Yeah, well, getting a good URL is nice to have though.
When you're selling a product, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah.
When your MVP's done and you're executing.
Yeah. So you're working on this project now. How long do you think it'll be till you have something to show people?
Well, I'm excited. Like, it's already way past MVP, you could say. So I kind of got lucky that a friend of mine owns this company now for 20 years that is in the trucking industry.
Okay.
And so what's really exciting to me is that there's sensors involved. It's not just an app in the cloud. There's physical sensors that you put on trucks that measure their weight in real time.
Okay. And that's important because
Think of why.
Why? There could be lots of different reasons. I'm just trying, for
That's
the
the answer. There's a lot of different reasons.
I mean, the reason because there's only so much a truck can carry, or if it's going on a bridge, or if it's
you get fined if you're overweight.
Going on bridges. Yeah.
You want to fill up the truck to capacity.
Yeah.
Think of a garbage truck going around, and if you knew the weight of all the bins, it would know which ones it should go and which ones it should skip until the bin is both the fill level and the weight. And but for the trucking industry, whether it's a forklift or a truck with a container on it or a dump truck, knowing that live weight is hugely important.
Yeah.
One first thing is the fines. If you're over maximum, they're really clamping down and huge fines. But think of the scales on the side of the road that you are forced to, as a truck driver, sometimes go off, get weighed, maybe get fined, hopefully not, but it's time consuming.
Yeah.
If you had a good system that was certified, just drive right by. And when the government wants your weight, just tap a button.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just there instantly.
Or it could just be there in real time, and they could just
they could be. Yeah. Okay, you got the next 5 minutes. You can see the streaming data, and here it is. So
anyway, so you're working on that. So that's pretty cool.
For a year now, it was just the perfect timing where I wanted to rewrite an app from scratch, knowing reactive programming was where it was at. And so learning kind of just that a new paradigm in a way. So for a year now, I've just been at it, loving it.
Yeah, I love it.
It's funny because the interface might look like the solar app I wrote.
Yeah.
But underneath, it's just so beautiful.
I just love it. No one will ever see it, but trust me, it's beautiful.
Well, it's neat. I could create it where you might see live weight streaming in. And if I, in 2 minutes, create a map that opens up and I say, oh, well, let's show all of the trucks on there with their live data streaming in. I don't have to do any code. I just create the map and say, okay, put it there. I don't have to tell the map anything.
Yeah,
it's all interconnected. So adding new features. And the exciting thing is the next, I'd say version 3, I'd love to start on it now, is so Firestore is the real-time database that I can do cloud function stuff. But what you really want to do is move it into something like BigQuery, which is Google's other more long-term database. And with the flip of a button, you've got Gemini, which is better than GPT for certain things.
Okay.
But with a flip of a button, you also have GPT. And with another flip of a button, you got 3 other AIs.
Yeah.
And so you have all of this awesome data in there that you can just sick these AIs on and do analytics for whatever you want.
Like the AI itself will be doing the analytics on.
Yeah, you've got the data set in there, and you're just like, literally, you can be like, hey, here's a fleet of 50 trucks. Can you just look at this and tell me ways maybe I could make the fleet more efficient?
Yeah, save some money. Basically, at the end of the day, right? Yeah.
It's like, I see truck 72 is only 72% fulls on Tuesdays every week. Right. What's going on there? Like, so
stuff that would take analysts like who knows how long if they could.
Yeah, and it's a combo, but that's luxury, not even needed. I mean, it's why wouldn't you? The data is so valuable.
Yeah.
But the first MVP is just like, hey, we need to know the weights in real time, and it's 2-directional. So we need to calibrate the system and configure it. So basically, it's like, hey, we need this system online, and instead of being a legacy system where this existed 20 years ago, it's so much more powerful the way it happens. Yeah. And if you were getting data, like, say it was once every 10 minutes, 1,000 trucks might cost me $10 a month.
Oh, wow. Really?
But if it was one truck streaming data every 5 seconds, it might be $1 for a month for everything.
Yeah.
That's the only cost.
That's like nothing. Yeah. And the amount of money that you would save as a company or whatever. From that.
And it's just all, like,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. But the thing is, as you start to really harness it and scale up and say, well, let's increase the data frequency, let's start really using CPU cycles on the AI and everything, as you start to really leverage it to solve pain points that will make you more money, Google's smart enough, say it was Google, is smart enough, and GPT, to say, okay, you're really using a lot of processing cycles. It's going to be $1,000 a month now to crunch this data constantly. So that price will go up as you add the dessert. But
still,
you never need, right now, that this low-hanging fruit, that's the cool thing. I asked GPT, it's okay, this end-to-end system, let's brainstorm. 15 other industries in 15 other industries in general. And then I say, let's focus on this one.
Yeah.
drills into exactly where it thinks like this would be a low hanging fruit with a low like barrier to entry and all of these things, which may or may not be right, but it's a great way to start and say, like I like the cold logistics side of it, whether it's food or medicine, whether it's a big warehouse or Sobeys or a little cafe. Just if your temperature goes outside of a range for X number of minutes, that food's gone, or the medicine is gone.
Yeah.
And so it's all legacy.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be cutting edge, awesome, modern legacy, but it's not reactive legacy from the ground up. So that's where, but brainstorm with GPT, it's like, that's a tough entry. So is the power and the grid side.
Yeah.
That's screaming for it. Tough. Those are the holy grails that I'm going towards.
Yeah.
Early on, maybe the garbage recycling, both weighing on site and around, that's a low hanging fruit. But GPT narrowed in on some others that I didn't even really know. I was like, well, what?
Think about it.
Why that industry?
Yeah.
Oh, this is. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And then you challenge. So anyway, it's exciting to kind of be trying to build something that includes sensors, if you want.
Yeah.
And is so hopefully, if it's built properly with Reactive, in 2 weeks, I could be like, oh, let's use this for temperature sensors instead for this industry. And it's just like, well, I don't really have to change anything.
Yeah.
It's like,
because
I can see.
As long as you get the data coming in, the tool could modify itself. Yeah. This reminds me.
Reactive to the data.
This reminds me very specifically of Data Shift, the company that I started with my professor and another friend of mine. But yeah, that's definitely an old school procedural thing where it's like, we'll take data in, but you have to program it to say like, okay, when this sensor goes beyond this value, then alert me or whatever. So it's definitely, you have to know what the data is.
So back then you would have been like, well, magic wand, what would it do? And you'd actually explain a reactive system. But unfortunately, back then you could have tried and it just wasn't. You couldn't have, even if you wanted to.
No.
Like LabVIEW is a really neat program ahead of its time in the 90s, like a graphical thing where you could hook up circuitry and stuff and just turn it on and it would just create. It's basically modeling the real world is what it is.
Yeah.
You're modeling the universe other than not understanding consciousness yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you recreate this room and everything and you press play, it's just going to react without you having to program in what that leaf should do if a little gust of wind comes along.
It just knows.
Just like a video game engine, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's really interesting. I think this is a really good takeaway, I think, for entrepreneurs and people that are figuring out how to, start their business or get their idea, is using tools like ChatGPT to just have back and forth and have discussions with them to try to figure out what could be like needs in the market or what have you. Because it's, like you say, I think it's like the best time right now to try to start a business because there's so much information that is available and it's like, it's free. You can just sign up for a free account.
I think we're going to look back and say, remember the good old days, like a Google search now is not as good as it was 10 years ago. You got to sift through all the ads and the clicks and everything.
And it's not even necessarily the best results sometimes because some stuff is like, okay, well, what are we wanting to kind of push?
You can sift through all the garbage and you still will likely not find the best things out there, and you're at the end of the results. You're like, in the early days of Google, you could search and you wouldn't see ads, and it would actually come back with scientific papers, and like it'd be so nice to have an on-off advertising button where you're like, I only want results that don't make money off of clicks and our advertisements.
Have you tried using other browsers?
I've used them over the years, but now that I have GPT.
I think there's some distinct uses for a Google search versus a
I use DuckDuckGo was the main one I would use sometimes. So, but now I probably it's less than 1/10 now that I use Google when I'm trying to find something out than I would have 2 years ago. Because of GPT.
It's crazy in terms of the amount of energy that is going to be needed to be able to fuel this whole AI stuff too. Because wasn't it like, I don't know what the exact number is. I've been hearing things from 1/4 or 4 times or 10 times the amount of energy per query.
It's all
nuclear.
Nuclear is it is safe if you build a modern plant. It puts itself out. So I'm pretty
That's
sure.
what a lot of people are saying.
Pretty sure that's covered with today's nuclear, let alone when they really solve
Yeah.
and get fusion going and everything.
Yeah, the fusion plants or
But
what have you.
it works well. But it's a good point you made. Like when I was kind of for the first time really learning about how important it is during the accelerator to try to identify and call clients and ask the questions first instead of just building it and knowing they would come.
Right.
Very important. Doesn't hurt. You should always do that.
Yeah.
And so when you mention GPT, along with that, if you get in a conversation with it, if I called and talked to 10 people for an hour each in the industry, and then I spent the same amount of time with GPT, I have a feeling it might be close to the same level of I definitely would get things from the actual humans who are part of it that I would never get. Yeah. But I have a feeling that what I would get out of GPT for the same amount of time or less would be just as valuable in all the ways that the humans couldn't be, and the humans would be valuable in all the ways that GPT
it's almost
couldn't
like they
be.
just complement each other as well too.
But so think if you didn't have the humans and you just had GPT, like that on its own is to me now as valuable as trying to conduct all these interviews with clients. I might almost prefer it.
Yeah. I could see that for sure. Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to give you the last word. Is there anything that that we haven't touched on today that you might want to say, or anything that's interesting in the realm of entrepreneurship or business owners?
I guess I would come back to, I think it's becoming a reactive world, which means whatever industry you're in, people are expecting products to just do what you want, and not be Siri.
Very easy to use, intuitive.
So whatever product you're creating, it's here. And I think to understand what a reactive architecture is, and to understand how it's here where you can today start to have your products become more reactive for your customer. It's about solving pain points. Yeah. So I think it's a kind of an exciting time for new products.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the real last thing is MVP. Like, it's the start of the journey to me, is defining what your minimum viable next goal is or product. The second that you've hit the finish line, if you defined it well, there's a finish line. You might have execution or something, but that's exciting because that's the day the next MVP for version 1.1 or version 2 begins. That's all, to me, it's just a way of expressing how it's great in life to have specific goals, especially if it's a new product that you really have to get to the core of to make sure it's the right choice, and that you're going to finish it and not keep adding features that are just luxury items. Yeah. So I'm a broken record on that one.
Awesome. Mike, thank you again for showing up. It was a pleasure, and we got to do this again sometime.
Sounds good.